they're taking them to the big bus. There's a big police bus, that old school one in the back over there. Look. Two. Hey, you guys do me a favor and hit the like and maybe share the stream if you want to share it. Thank you.
Past Claire. Got a curfew in place from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. from I-110 to West 5 to 10, South I-5 and I-110 to North. Residents within these boundaries, as well as traveling to and from work, seeing or giving emergency care or emergency responders are exempt. More info. I was also told, which is where I qualify, residents, of course, and homeless people who have nowhere to go are exempt. So I'm exempt. I'm cool, you guys. And I'll be able to, film a little bit in a spot where I stand for a little while. But If there's a dispersal order, then you must disperse. You know what I mean? A situation where they start capping and you stand pop guns and get a ticket for, you know, not dispersing fast enough. So I always try to position myself that. If I know what kind of people, 550 people, I'll be some kind of genius, man. You got every kind of support in there, I'm sure. So, it's like out here, y'all something fine with you. It's actually really quiet out here, though, guys. So let it be quiet. If things are kind of cool out, it feels a lot better. You know, first 2 days, because personally, I'm not in a transition situation, so I'm not really stressed out. Now, but you gotta respect the calls, though, man. Like I said, most people, when isolated, those people's homes or those jobs, you got those people off guard like that. It's symptomatic experiences. Like I said, respect everybody involved in the situation. Somehow we will all come to a positive resolution at the end of the day.
Please come in hitting the like button. Oh.
This is what freedom looks like, motherfucker. This is freedom. Look, nobody would fight. Would fight. Justice, no peace, all these racist ass police.
Sweet Sleep magnesium butter is our best-selling product for children. I actually created it for my
Please don't spam the chat and repeat the same stuff over and over. Do not spam the chat. Hit the like button.
descending on the downtown. You see there these vehicles moving on. So in the meantime, we're going to try to keep these shots up as much as we can. You see there California National Guard members that have been federalized in order to bring some of this unrest under control, though we have not seen any tense moments, any conflict since we've been bringing you these scenes just today. Now, obviously, you have probably been watching throughout the last 6 days, and that can change on a dime here. Let's get an update, though. Let's get a kind of debrief of all of these protest movements going on in so many cities across the country.
Are y'all able to hear? Please hit the like button.
Los Angeles expecting a 6th day of protest against President Trump's crackdown on illegal migrants as solidarity rallies and violence erupt in cities across the country. But stillness greeted the nation's second largest city this morning after an overnight curfew enacted in response to the looting of nearly 24 businesses. Later today, active duty Marines could join already deployed National Guard troops.
We will not allow federal agents to be attacked, and we will not allow an American city to be invaded and conquered by a foreign enemy.
California Governor Gavin Newsom is continuing to criticize the federal response.
This is about all of us. This is about you. California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other states are next. Democracy is next.
Protests against ICE seen across the country.
We're in the belly of the beast, and if we're not showing up to show them that we're here and we're present, then who else is?
Protests have popped up from Seattle to Boston, Chicago, Atlanta, D.C., and New York, leading to dozens of arrests. Some local politicians say they support their residents.
The federal government does not seem to be following all the laws in this moment, and that's why we are standing up and refusing to be bullied out of speaking the truth.
A federal judge Thursday will consider a lawsuit by Governor Gavin Newsom to limit the military's role. In Los Angeles, Wayne Martinez, Fox News.
William, thanks so much. In the meantime, let's bring into conversation now our colleague and friend there, national security analyst and expert and retired Marine Intelligence Officer, Hal Pepper. He joins me. Hal, thanks for being with us. I know you're traveling, but we had to get you on for a second night in a row here as we continue to look at these live images there in downtown Los Angeles. Hal, we have to acknowledge this. I'm sure you've acknowledged it. The Marines not on ground yet. What do you make of that?
Well, what I understand is they're just outside of Los Angeles. They're undergoing training and preparation in order to go into the city. I don't read too much into it other than it's the planning process. You know, National Guard gets training in civil disturbance on a regular basis. It's something they do. Usually they do it in state active duty status, working under the governor. In that regard, they are not held under posse comitatus, that federal law that says the military can't do law enforcement. In this case, they're federalized. Doesn't mean they didn't get the training in civil disturbance. Marines, on the other hand, this is an unusual training set, if you will. It's not that Marines have not been trained in civil disturbance. I know for a fact Marines have been trained in this many times, and they've been trained in for here in the U.S. and overseas. But it's just not part of the regular training curriculum. So what they did is they brought them in. I think part of it, too, is there's a lot of forces that have been brought in under this Task Force 51 to go into Los Angeles. And I'm seeing the normal sort of organizational issues of getting forces deployed to certain areas and set up and self-sustainable and all the other things that go with that. So I think there's kind of a deliberate process here of movement onward to wherever they got to go. And so they're staged right outside of LA, but they could come in rather quickly. One thing I would say is I haven't seen the protests spark up in such a way that there's an exigent need to put them in sooner. And I think that's something that has to be taken into consideration.
So this was posted about under an hour ago. That, according to the LAPD, the Central Division, there are 3 separate demonstrations occurring at this hour. And they say to expect delays at some of these intersections and street corners here. You see there Temple and First Street, Temple and Aliso, and First Street from Main Street there. They say about 150 people on bicycles riding westbound. Haven't necessarily seen that throughout this. We've seen them on scooters and the like, but also LA County Sheriff saying this: to avoid protest area, that a demonstration is underway in downtown Los Angeles, saying to please avoid the area due to heavy traffic and potential delays, saying use alternate routes and stay updated via official sources. So, Hal, I think this is kind of a bare bones question here, if you can help us, because I've been having trouble with distinguishing who these law enforcement entities are with respect to their uniforms, what they wear on their shoulders and the like here. So who are these? What jurisdiction are these individuals from?
I'm trying to make it out right now. I will tell you that LAPD is out there. LA County Sheriff's is out there. They are bringing in other jurisdictions under mutual aid out there as well. A lot of these other jurisdictions, and these might, taking a look here, it looks like those are National Guard, I believe.
The shield that they're holding says California National Guard.
Yeah, so they're National Guard, but there are, but some in the back are clearly not. They're probably local police department. I would mention this is part of an ongoing discussion that's been going back for 30 or 40 years, which is the militarization of law enforcement, where they have units. They're, you know, what look like military uniforms. They wear helmets. They've got body armor, everything. And from a distance, many times it's very difficult to see whether they are actually military or law enforcement, particularly in this situation, because we actually have military in these areas. And I have heard it misreported at times that they thought there was military that was in direct contact or doing stuff with the protesters. In actuality, it was law enforcement that was dressed up in what appears to be, you know, military or paramilitary uniforms that are part of their usually special enforcement or their SWAT type presence. So, though, you know, that you saw right there was with the California National Guard. Those are California National Guard, albeit they are in federalized status. What I would point out that's interesting is the shields say California National Guard. Normally, when they're doing a mission like this, they would be in state status.
Okay.
And that's why they would distinguish the fact that they are California National Guard, kind of showing that state status, working for the governor, where they are not fall under posse comitatus rules against law enforcement. However, those are the only shields they got. So even though they got federalized, those are the shields they have.
So, Hal, I've seen photos, or maybe we can put some of them up on X, from Homeland Security, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Los Angeles, that the National Guard that was federalized, the California National Guard, has been used to protect federal employees, i.e. ICE agents, from carrying out raids. We've seen that. That's been documented in photographs. We also have seen the National Guard protect federal buildings, like in downtown Los Angeles. We've seen that. That's what we're seeing right now. Does the federalized National Guard have the power to detain protesters, Hal?
Yes, they do. That's one of those things. Posse comitatus is a really small body of law. It's like one very small paragraph, a couple of key sentences. What they can't do is they can't arrest the protesters. However, and this has happened many, many times, they're out there doing security stuff. Protesters get in their face. They pose a threat, whatever. What can they do? Well, obviously, they can respond with force. But the other thing they can do is they can detain. Now, they can't arrest, and they need to move them into law enforcement custody as quickly as possible whenever they do that. I don't know if there's a hard and fast rule on how long they can detain them. I don't recall there being anything statutorily that says it has to be X number of minutes or hours or whatever. But they can detain them. They just can't do anything that would be done by a sworn peace officer in terms of arresting them or anything like that. But they can detain them on site. And that will happen as you have federal troops protecting ICE agents doing these raids, which we had talked about when this whole thing kicked off, that appeared to be a mission that they were going to be doing, that they would be detaining people. And
so this is what I'm talking about, Hal, this photo right here of a National Guard member on hand while an ICE arrest is happening. So you're saying that that's not all too unusual.
No, that's not. Well, the whole thing is a little bit unusual, but yeah, that is actually a mission that would be normally expected, and there are rules of force and procedures that they have to go through in terms of detaining. But what you're seeing there is law enforcement actually arresting the individual.
From Kansas City to the capital city, Washburn University will surprise you. A tight-knit college in a city of opportunity. Washburn offers the best of both worlds. Close, but not too close. Small classes and big experiences. Public, prestigious, and affordable. Above all, Washburn delivers a personalized education you won't find at larger schools. Find the right path at washburn.edu.
In our lively home, every day is special, but sometimes the world outside sends us surprises.
Do you hear that?
It's my phone. It's a wireless emergency alert.
Emergency alerts are like our protective friends, letting us know when we need to be cautious. They come from trusted places and tell us what to expect and how to stay safe. And the best part? These alerts don't cost a thing, and they'll reach us even when the phone lines are super busy.
Attention. This is an emergency alert system announcement.
Another way we can get emergency alerts is through our TVs. Emergency alerts will light up our TVs and radios with vital info, whether it's critical weather information or important news from our leader.
Federal troop.
Are y'all still able to hear?
Now, the federal troop, if there wasn't law enforcement there and they were providing security, they could potentially detain them. I think within that, they could probably even, there's certain things they could do to restrain them if they were unruly or violent or something like that, like maybe put on flex cuffs or something. And that would be perfectly permissible. What they can't do is they can't put them under arrest. They can't read them the rights. They can't do any of that. They can't book them or do any of the things that a sworn law enforcement officer or a law enforcement officer would do in that regard.
Okay.
And so that's the limitation right now. Now, if President Trump was to impose the Insurrection Act, that would change the situation. But he has not done that. He certainly made noise, or I should say, put out rhetoric that indicates he's very clearly considering that at some point.
Yeah.
But he has not done that.
All right, Al, let's talk about the curfew in place. It'll be in place now tonight for a second night, starting at 8 p.m. local time. Do curfews work? I know you've been around crowd control, and so you are a really good resource with respect to that. When it went into effect last night, there was some type of grace period, but it eventually seemingly worked here. Will it work a second night? Do curfews work? That's my question.
Curfews tend to work. In fact, curfews we use them all over the world. We had curfews when we went to Iraq. There were curfews. Curfews work, and what curfews really do is they say they get any potential threat, if you will, off the streets. Or if they are on the streets during a curfew, then they've clearly identified themselves as someone who has first decided to violate the curfew. Does that mean they're an active threat? Well, it does mean that they can be detained, that they can be stopped, and there are certain conditions that you have that you wouldn't have if it was just a regular day and people were out on the streets. So you're saying, look, you cannot be in this area at this period of time. And if somebody is in that area, it is understood that they will be taken into custody or detained or something like that. Okay. So it kind of clears action, if you will. It really it helps law enforcement across the board basically control an area in a way that they couldn't control it if there wasn't a curfew in place.
So if the clock strikes 8:01 in Los Angeles tonight, and there are protesters still out there liable to be arrested, to be detained. That's what you're saying?
They could be. They could be. I'm sure they just go up and they say, hey, it's 8:01. You need to get out of here. And sometimes, honestly, the protesters are out there and they're kind of making a statement stuff, but they don't all want to go to jail. They don't all want to get detained. I mean, there are some that want to make a statement and get arrested and things like that. But for the most part, usually depending on the tempo of what's going on and the fervor of the crowd, that usually around that transition period, they'll move out there. We certainly saw this in previous protests where it got to the time where they were supposed to get off the streets and it was clearly communicated to them, hey, it's time to go. You got to clear this area.
Okay.
And normally they will, not always, but I will say this, if they start wantonly violating their curfew, if they are out there doing vandalism and violence and stuff after the curfew, well, that's a dangerous shift in the situation. And honestly, that's something that President Trump might cite in his decision-making process.
I want to put up this post by our colleague at Fox 11, reporter Matthew Seedorf, saying this: more than 220 people were arrested in downtown Los Angeles Tuesday. That's yesterday. This includes a person accused of pointing a laser at an LAPD helicopter, one assault with a deadly weapon on a police officer, and 3 people illegally in possession of firearms. Hal, what do you make of that? 3 people who were detained, who were arrested, they had guns on them during this protest. How does that happen?
All 3 of the things that they pointed out there are very serious. Obviously, the firearms jumps out, but I would say assault with a deadly weapon. Look, a brick can be a very deadly weapon. A metal pole can be a deadly weapon. Incredible mayhem can be caused by that. But I want to point out one that doesn't get enough attention. That laser at a helicopter, that right there is a felony. If they laze a helicopter, they can dazzle, which means blind or temporarily blind the pilots in a helicopter. You could imagine the potential hazard that poses if the pilots of the helicopter can't see when they're flying in an urban area with tall buildings trying to do stuff. That is a very serious crime. And so all 3 of those things are very serious crimes. And hopefully putting that out there will quell that kind of stuff. But it also says another thing, too. They're looking actively, and they should be, they're looking actively to find out if anybody in the crowd is carrying a firearm. And it's good that they were able to do that.
Yeah.
And hopefully it will deter anyone else from doing something really as dangerous and just plainly stupid as going to a protest with a firearm.
So, Hal, I'm not entirely sure if this next question is the right question to ask you, but I'm going to ask it anyway because it's becoming a frequent topic of conversation, especially on Capitol Hill, from Republican lawmakers especially, whether or not these protests are so organized that they are paid for by certain activist groups here. In what you have seen with regard to the formulation of the protests, do you think they're decentralized or centralized? Is there a top leadership chart in the organization all the way on down? Or no, is it more organic than what we're seeing? What say you on that question?
That's actually a very good question. And I understand the FBI is actually actively investigating that to find that out. I'm going to say one thing about protests, and we've seen this. We saw this going back some years back with AunTeaFee, for example, would be out there protesting, and it would look like a spontaneous protest. But when you start looking at various different protests, you start to see the same individuals show up in different locations, and it looked like they were doing things like command and control. So there are those out there who are, dare I say, professional protesters, in some cases professional rioters, if you will. They go in there and they take advantage of these situations. I have no doubt there are some on the ground here who really don't have a strong feeling one way or another about the topic du jour, but they see it as an opportunity to protest. And in the past, we have found a lot of control, communications between them, which doesn't have to be elaborate. I mean, it can be literally, certainly we've had discussions about senior administration officials using Signal, if you will, to communicate things they shouldn't. Well, they also do the same thing. They'll be using various apps and stuff to communicate things back and forth with the crowd and orchestrate things. And that is pretty much protest 101. We've seen that with protests over the many years. Now, is this funded by some entity? Are there paid protesters out there? I've seen stuff pop up in the media, where just kind of speculation and things like that. I haven't seen anything yet which shows that this is clearly an orchestrated type of thing.
Okay.
Clearly looked like it was kind of spontaneous on the ground. But once you have something like this happen, there is an invitation to those who like to exploit events like this to do things.
Okay.
And they may step in some way.
Hal, last question. They keep coming to me. I know I'm extremely interested in this, as so many viewers are. Is there a shelf life on the emergency, so to speak? I'm going to ask when this is all going to be said and done. We don't know that. That's impossible to foretell here. But Pete Hegseth, the Defense Secretary, was on Capitol Hill yet again for day 2 of his testimony, and he was asked, how long will the Marines be in this kind of limbo deployment, ready to go if needed? How long does that last? How long can the president keep a state's National Guard in a federalized status? Do we know that?
Well, I will say this. I've heard them say 6 days. I've heard that out there. They're saying this is initially. I think I have not seen a copy of the orders, but it sounds like the orders were initially for 60 days with the, certainly they'd always have the option to extend. How long can you keep National Guard in federalized status? Well, you can keep them in federalized status for years if you wanted. There's really no cap on that. And if you want to go back to World War II, the National Guard troops got federalized and they stayed there until the war was over plus a month. So there's a long time you can do this. But really the cap, the ticking clock in the background is one is a law, as we've mentioned on the, as we've talked about, it's called the U.S. Economy Act. It's one of the, when I was doing this, when I was coordinating military support of civil authorities in all its various incarnations, 2 things you look at. One is you can't violate posse comitatus if they're in federal status. The other was the Economy Act, which basically says that you've got to look for the most economical source of goods and services. Why? Because the military is extremely expensive. And Congress back in the early 30s didn't want various agencies always going to the military to do stuff because it's really expensive, very capable, but really expensive. So there's some things that have to happen. The Secretary of Defense and probably the other secretaries involved, the supporting and supported secretaries, I should say, or cabinet members, have to sign off on a waiver to allow this presence to continue to allow the use of military forces for this particular mission. That's kind of that's a de rigueur administrative step they have to take. Okay. But at some point there, Congress will look at it. The courts might look at it and say, did you really need federal troops out there doing this? Could you have found another way to do this? So there is overview. So that's kind of the ticking clock, but there isn't like you got to get them out there in 2 weeks or you got to get them out in 30 days. There's nothing like that. Okay, there does seem to be an as long as it takes quality to some of the comments coming from Secretary Hegseth and even President Trump, so that's why I asked that question. Hal Kemper, as always, thanks so much. We'll talk soon. Great. And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass and other city officials addressing the public live right now. Let's watch.
To stop the vandalism, to stop the looting. Many businesses have now been affected by or vandalized. Last night, there were 23 businesses that were looted. And I think that if you drive through downtown LA, the graffiti is everywhere and has caused significant damages to businesses and a number of properties. So my message to you is, if you do not live or work in downtown LA, avoid the area. Law enforcement will arrest individuals who break the curfew, and you will be prosecuted. Hundreds of officers from police and sheriff departments from across the region and state are working alongside LAPD through a unified command structure. The curfew will be in place tonight from 8 p.m. until 6 a.m. I want to thank the governor for his partnership and especially thank our state and local leaders and deputies, officers and deputies who are working tirelessly. So curfew guidance, again, it will begin at 8 p.m. tonight and go until 6 a.m. tomorrow. I will consult with elected leaders and law enforcement officials tomorrow on the continuation of the curfew, but we certainly expect for it to last for several days. The curfew area will be between the 5 freeway and to the 110 and the 10 freeway to where 110 freeway and 5 freeway merge. You can look at the map and you can see that the city of Los Angeles is a massive area, 502 square miles. The area of downtown where the curfew will take place is 1 square mile. I think it is important to point this out to minimize the vandalism and violence that has taken place there. It has been significant, but it is extremely important to know that what is happening in this 1 square mile is not affecting the city. Some of the imagery of the protests and the violence gives the appearance as though this is a citywide crisis, and it is not. So everyone must abide by this curfew. Limited exceptions will apply for residents, people traveling to and from work, and credentialed media representatives. With that, I would like to turn it over to Chief Jim McDonnell.
Thank you, Mayor Bass. Good afternoon, everyone. As the mayor stated, a curfew for the impacted area, as shown here, will go into effect tonight. And I want to be absolutely clear that if you're within that designated curfew zone between the hours of 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. And are not exempt under the order, you're going to be subject to arrest. The curfew boundaries are as follows: from the 5 freeway to the 110 freeway, and from the 10 freeway to the point where the 110 and the 5 merge. Easier to look at it on that map for description. The curfew is necessary, a necessary measure to protect lives and safeguard property following several consecutive days of growing unrest throughout the city. Since Saturday, we've seen a concerning escalation in unlawful and dangerous behavior. On Saturday, LAPD officers made 27 arrests. On Sunday, that number rose to 40. By Monday, arrests totaled 114, and today alone, we've made 197 arrests. So the recent days, it's been as a part of a unified command with our partner agencies who've responded through mutual aid compact and been very, very helpful to us. We're very thankful for that participation. Of those I mentioned for today, 130 were arrested near Commercial and Alameda. An additional 67 were taken into custody after unlawfully occupying the 101 freeway near Commercial Street. Our CHP partners were instrumental in that. So again, let me be clear that this behavior, blocking freeways, city streets, and on-ramps, refusing to comply with lawful dispersal orders, and interfering with public safety operations is dangerous, unlawful, and won't be tolerated. If you are in the curfew zone during the restricted hours without that legal exemption, you will be arrested. If you assault an officer in any fashion, you will be arrested. We're operating under a unified command with our partners at the Los Angeles City Fire Department, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, the California Highway Patrol. We're fully coordinated, and our shared mission is clear: to restore peace and ensure the safety of everyone in our city. We previously mobilized part of our department at LAPD while keeping our ability to be able to provide the services that our community deserves going. We're going to be adding to that deployment with additional internal LAPD resources in the days ahead. The curfew does not apply to residents within the designated area, individuals experiencing homelessness, credentialed media, or public safety and emergency personnel. To be clear again, that's not about silencing voices or suppressing lawful protest. When that expression crosses into unlawful conduct, when lives are put at risk, and when our city safety is compromised, we must act, and we will act. We urge all Angelenos to cooperate with these public safety measures. Our shared goal is to protect our communities and return to a state of calm and safety for everyone. Thank you. Mayor.
Let me introduce now the councilwoman who represents the majority of the district, Councilwoman Isabel Harata.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm here today not just as a council member who represents downtown LA, but as its advocate who deeply loves and believes in this community. The history of Los Angeles began right here in downtown, where 200 years later, the grouping of historic neighborhoods remains the beating heart of our city, a place with rich culture and deep community. Downtown LA is a place where workers clock in before sunrise and small business owners know their customers by name, where neighbors greet each other on the sidewalk, and where generations of families have built lives, shared stories, made memories together side by side. It's one of the most vibrant and resilient and hopeful parts of our city. But too often, downtown LA is treated like a backdrop for major events, not the living, breathing community it is. and right now, it's hurting. I am deeply proud that downtown has always been the place where Angelenos from all over the city gather to peacefully protest. I support the right to demonstrate, and the mayor and I know that right is sacred, and at times it's necessary, but we must also face what's happening right now. When these peaceful rallies end and the protesters head home, another element moves in. Opportunists who come in under the cover of a peaceful protest to ravage and destroy. They are ruining local small businesses, smashing storefronts, and threatening the safety of the very community that has always welcomed people from across the city and globe. This isn't just broken glass or stolen goods, it's someone's livelihood, someone's safe space, someone's home that's been violated. And it's happening in a neighborhood where working class families are just trying to live. Our street vendors, our garment workers, many of whom are immigrants, continue to watch their communities be torn apart. And that's why I'm thankful the mayor for leveraging this tool, enacting a curfew to begin tonight. This has been something that many of my constituents in downtown have been calling for what they're facing. This curfew is not about silencing protests. It's about protecting people and ensuring that the local residents, small businesses, our families, our elders, and our workers are not left vulnerable to those who come only to destroy. What happens in downtown reverberates all throughout LA, and when we protect downtown, we protect our city. And we're investing in its future, and we invest in our shared future. So to my colleagues and to our residents and everyone watching, downtown LA is not just a center for the First Amendment expression, it's a community. It's a home, and the people in it deserve our protection and care. That path ahead may be uncertain, but our responsibility to protect and uplift this neighborhood is not. I want to close this message from my constituents so that you hear them loud and clear. Downtown LA is home. Please keep it safe, and let's keep each other safe. Thank you, Los Angeles.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman. I'd now like to introduce Nella McCosker, who is the CEO of the Central City Association. We were having conversations this morning about a couple of things. One, the ongoing problem with violence, but also the need, when all of this subsides, is to repair and restore downtown Los Angeles, especially the businesses and properties that have been hit with graffiti. Nella McCosker.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Council Member. The swift action today to take a look at and examine how this curfew could be put in place is a good example of the leadership we see and continue to need for downtown. CCA.
Back up! Wrong way! Back up! Down the way! Back up! Back up! Yo, they dropped their body camera! You finally get that shit. rise up fine champagne, solitude confinement. It'll gift us something. flashing a light? Whoa, what the fuck? Why is he flashing a light at me? What the fuck? Yo. My ninja. What the fuck? The guy right behind the shorter guy. The shorter guy. Back there. I know that. Oh no, actually, the guy that had the other uniform, he was recording. Oh, he had the recording Ray-Ban glasses. I don't know why that light was pointed at me, so I'm not even doing shit. Ray-Ban dude, yeah. The instant protest. They're attacking it behind me. I kind of thought, oh, fuck, it's coming over here. They're blocking it off. They're blocking it off, dude. So we can't exit that way anymore. They just blocked it off. They blocked it off over there. Oh my god, wait, are we gonna get trapped? Oh, hell no. What, like go across the street or what?
Protests that are going on in LA. I 100% do. Please keep going. Burn down your own backyard if you must. You know why? Because this right here is the greatest campaign ad that this side never had to pay for. Y'all motherfuckers out there in Los Angeles doing a full-blown fucking tantrum. Like y'all just crawled out the Rio Grande, screaming death to America. In a country that gave you the fucking freedom to do that shit. You were born at Kaiser Permanente.
Forcibly removing him from the room. Officers taking Padilla to the ground. Then handcuffing the senator, hands behind his back, face down on the floor. He was later released.
I think everybody in America would agree that that wasn't appropriate. That if you wanted to have a civil discussion, especially as a leader.
It's up in the green flag, bro. That's gonna be a big fire. She's tripping. She's all bad. Oh yeah, dude, Saturdays.
From what I'm hearing from a few people, the Saturday is supposed to be the biggest day of the process like that.
As we speak. So to answer your question, should we see more protests or others try to stand off with police? At this moment, I don't think so. But of course, things can change at any point. We'll send it back to you, the studio.
Thank you for the vantage point. Yes, you still hear the commotion off there to the side of him. And so now you have police completely swarmed around this crowd. Just to back things up for you, this all began at 7 o'clock. The demonstration started peacefully. About 100 or so people from our vantage point were watching in the early evening, growing into the hundreds. It was about 9 o'clock when we saw an escalation, the tear gas, and more when police declared an unlawful assembly. We want to get another check in now with Jim. And Jim, now that we've connected once again, I asked Andrew, did he think that things were going to escalate overnight? He didn't think so. What are you thinking from your point of view?
The protests are going on in LA. I'm 100% there. Please keep going. Burn down your own backyard if you must. You know why? Because this right here is the greatest campaign ad that this side never had to pay for. Y'all motherfuckers out there in Los Angeles doing a full-blown fucking tantrum. Like y'all just crawled out the Rio Grande, screaming death to America. In a country that gave you the fucking freedom to do that shit. You were born at Casa Permanente in Burbank. Stop it. You ain't El Chapo, you're Chris from Pasadena. You ain't cartel born. You were Target born with a Costco membership by age 5.
Governor Newsom is speaking right now after a federal judge ruled against the Trump administration, ordering Trump to return control of the National Guard to Newsom. Let's listen.
Those cornerstones are asserted were not met. Section 12, 406. There's no invasion. There's no rebellion. It's absurd. And so we're gratified. Today is a big day for the Constitution of the United States, for our democracy. And I hope it's the beginning of a new day in this country where we push back against these authoritarian tendencies of a president that has pushed the boundaries, pushed the limit, but no longer can push this state around any longer. Happy to take any questions. Well, I hope we look at what happened to Senator Padilla, not through the blue or...
The key to being rich is knowing what
happened to Senator Padilla, not through the blue or red lens, but through your own set of eyes. And just tell me that that's right. Here's a United States Senator in his home state in a federal building, office building, that wishes to join a press conference, not dissimilar to this, and express himself by simply asking a question, and was handcuffed, was thrown down to the ground, a United States Senator. And anyone that knows Alex Padilla knows one thing about Alex Padilla. He's one of the most mild-mannered, decent people you'll meet. And that's not, don't just take my word for it. Folks on the other side of the aisle would acknowledge that. I thought it was a disgrace. I want to make this clear. The National Guard will come back under my authority by noon tomorrow. The National Guard will be redeployed to what they were doing before Donald Trump commandeered them. The National Guard will go back to border security, working on counter-drug enforcement and fentanyl enforcement, which they were taken off by Donald Trump. The National Guard will go back to working on what we refer to as the rattlesnake teams, doing vegetation and forest management, which Donald Trump took them off in preparation for wildfire season. The National Guard, men and women, will go back to their day jobs, which include law enforcement, that he took them off the job. Just want you to all absorb what I just said. By the way, you don't have to absorb it. You'll have an opportunity to review that in the 36-page order from Justice Breyer that laid that out. And it'll come back under the rightful command of the governor of the state of California.
Demonstrate on Saturday in response to this military event.
Do it peacefully. It's a vulgar display. It's the kind of thing you see Kim Jong-un, you see it Putin, you see it with dictators around the world that are weak and just want to demonstrate strength. Weakness masquerading as strength. To fet the dear leader on his birthday. What an embarrassment. Honestly, it's that's about as small as it gets. How weak do you have to be to commandeer the military to fet you on your birthday in a vulgar display of weakness? That's Donald Trump.
Governor, you warned other states in your address the other night. What are the messages and conversations you've been having with those blue state leaders?
Well, these governors have all been waiting for this decision. I haven't had a chance to talk to any governors. And by the way, every Republican governor. I remember one of them by the name of Kristi Noem, who just a few months ago was on there with one of the spokespeople for the Trump administration, Sean Hannity, and was going on and on and on about a rumor that somehow former President Biden was going to federalize her national troop. And she stood there talking about freedom, federalism, the 10th Amendment. And here she is, her folks throwing the United States Senator from the great state of California on the ground and handcuffing him in his office building in 2025.
Governor, what about the Marines? Were you disappointed that Judge Breyer didn't address that issue? Is that something that you expected to develop?
Well, there's been a lot of rhetoric from Pete Hegseth, that's his name, that they've quote unquote been deployed, but it doesn't appear they have been. But they were making you believe that. And so I think the judge was waiting for the evidence that they actually have been deployed into Los Angeles, which they appear not to be. Of course, they're not coordinating with anybody on this. So he's just waiting for that evidence. Obviously, they moved to another location for training exercises. But here's the bottom line. The police do policing. Military, it's for the battlefield.
You probably know Vistaprint for business cards because we've printed them for millions of small businesses over the past 25 years.
Military, it's for the battlefield. The idea that these unbelievably brave young men and women that I work with, that we have had the benefit of their extraordinary contribution all across this state. I gave you 3 examples. What more evidence do we need of the work they did for the wildfires in Los Angeles and all the work they did to secure locations and keep property and personal lives safe over the course of the last few months? These folks are now being commandeered to do ice raids. You've seen the photographs. That ends tomorrow at noon. And the notion that the United States active duty Marines, these heroes, would be used to militarize the streets of an American city is an abomination. Founding fathers did not live and die to see that happen in this country for no reason whatsoever than vanity, theater, to instill fear, to incite a response. So I'm very hopeful this order puts that in perspective, and hopefully Donald Trump will immediately back down. The courts have ruled on the guard. It will be back under my command, and he'll be relieved. Donald Trump will be relieved of his command at noon tomorrow.
On that note, are you confident that the President and Secretary Hegseth will honor this order? And then you've also mentioned that you tried to work with the President in the past.
Of course.
Has this situation changed your dynamic with the President?
No, because I will work with anyone to advance the interests of 40 million Americans that I happen to represent here in California. And so I've always maintained an open hand, not a closed fist. But I also am going to stand firm and tall and push back against lawlessness, against someone that does not believe in the rule of law, does not believe in constraints, does not believe in the Constitution, who is threatening judges, that threatens not to abide by orders, and Donald Trump better abide by these orders, or we have a constitutional crisis, likes of which we haven't seen in our lifetime. Well, that will be determined by fate and future, but also fundamentally by whatever decision he makes. That's how things break down. It's a federal judge with a federal order. Period, full stop. It's the rule of law. These are the foundational principles of a constitutional democracy. He must work under the constraints as a constitutional officer of the Constitution of the United States of America. That's what this court order demands of the President of the United States. He is not a monarch, he is not a king, and he should stop acting like one.
Governor, when's the last time you spoke to the president?
I spoke to him on Friday night. He had a mysterious conversation with me 3 days later. You can't even make this stuff up.
Attorneys for the government need to read out that conversation. Do you have a readout?
Oh, I would love to share the readout, but I revere the office of presidency, so I'll keep it in confidence. He has quite literally made up components of that conversation. He's been a stone cold liar about what he said we talked about. He never discussed the National Guard, period, full stop. I would love to share with you what he actually talked about. It would send shivers up your spine.
Attorneys for the government today seem to imply that that Friday call, that you might have been aware that this was coming, or can you confirm whether or not you knew that this was coming, this order was coming?
Of course not. Yeah, no, absolutely not. We were back and forth with Susie Wiles as chief of staff, and then mayor of Los Angeles saw a missed call from the president, called him back. I actually texted him back. You want full disclosure? And he called me right back. We discussed for a nanosecond Los Angeles, and he immediately zigged and zagged into 7 or 8 other topics, some extraordinarily familiar and some extraordinarily remarkable, considering the world we're living in.
How did you find out?
I learned about it when I saw some tweet about Governor Newsom, a nickname, by the way, that's hardly original. There was an 8th grader on Baltimore Street in Corte Madera that used to call me that. And the reference to the National Guard being commandeered in that same tweet. That's how I learned about it.
Governor, are you confident you're going to stand on the field, especially against the Supreme Court?
Well, I'm confident in the rule of law. I'm confident in the Constitution of the United States. I'm confident in the wisdom and judgment of a very well-respected federal judge. And I'm confident on the basis of the review of the 36 pages, absolutely, it will stand.
Governor, does this order go even further than you expected? I think your attorneys had asked for them to simply be restricted to federal buildings.
I'll just say we're extraordinarily pleased by the 36-page ruling of Justice Breyer.
Can you speak to some of the journalists who have been, about some of the journalists in LA who have been hit with rubber bullets or?
Well, there's 2 investigations. The one we initiated with the California Highway Patrol, and there's one that has been initiated independent by the LAPD. And people should feel safe. Reporters absolutely should feel safe. And we'll get to the bottom of it. I don't want to prejudge, but I'm concerned about them. That's why we advanced the investigations.
Governor, today in San Francisco, immigration attorneys tell us that there were 3 additional folks who were detained while heading into the ICE court offices on Sansome. This is some of just many detentions we've seen at courthouses and immigration offices in the Bay Area, around the state. And many of these people, their attorneys are telling us they have complicated technical cases. What are your thoughts about seeing these detentions occurring in your communities around California?
Well, he's on, let's just dispense. It's not about criminals. If it's about criminals, got no beef with me. We want to secure our border. We need comprehensive immigration reform.
We need a pathway to citizenship for people being here 10, 15, 20 years, contributing, paying their taxes, being remarkable members of our community. But that's not what this is about. I was in Oxnard, California, Ventura County yesterday, met with three people directly impacted by indiscriminate raids. I met a 12-year-old boy in 6th grade, weeping, crying, tears pouring down his face. His mother and father were both detained. They disappeared. He has no brothers, no sisters, no family. He quite literally is on his own, abandoned. That's Donald Trump's America. 20 plus years, his mom and dad working in the same fields, doing the same packing and shipping. 20 plus years. They've disappeared. 12-year-old boy. You saw the images of ICE officers running through strawberry fields. CBP helicopters above. I met a woman, a single mother, who was walking out at 5:45 a.m. to get in her car. 7 agents surrounded her. They took her in a car, in essence kidnapping her, driving her around for almost 2 hours until she finally convinced the agent, because she has 3 young children, a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, and an 8-year-old, that they needed to get to school, and there's no one to help them get to school. She was finally allowed to call her oldest daughter, who was interrogated by the agent and threatened. And they threatened her after they dropped her off, said, "We may be back." Terrorizing this little single mother. No criminal record, no criminal background. I met another young woman whose husband has quite literally disappeared. No criminal record. She doesn't know what to do. She doesn't even know what happened. That was just yesterday. That's Donald Trump's America. Agricultural workers. Think about that when you have dinner tonight. Think about when you enjoy your first course. Have some fresh fruit, some fresh vegetables. Who provided those? Who supported you? None. Think about it when you go home and the construction around your property. Maybe you're getting a remodel. Who's doing that work? Destroying not only the foundations of our democracy, the best, again, in the Roman Republic and Greek democracy, but now our economy is at risk because of the recklessness and the cruelty of Donald Trump, the indiscriminate cruelty of Donald Trump. Why else do you go to a 7-Eleven? Why else do you go to a nail salon? Why else do you just randomly show up in front of a hardware store? Why else? It's not about criminals. That's about creating chaos. And I do not believe the American people, the majority of the American people, support that. Quite the contrary. And so this decision was important because it's about constraints. It's about limits. It's about our democracy. And that's why we're very grateful by the order. Liar about what he said we talked about. He never discussed the National Guard, period, full stop. I would love to share with you what he actually talked about. That would send shivers up your spine.
Attorneys for the government though today seem to imply that that Friday call, that you might have been aware that this was coming, or can you confirm whether or not you knew that this was coming, this order was coming?
Of course not. Yeah, no, absolutely not. We were back and forth with Susie Wiles as chief of staff, and then called mayor of Los Angeles, saw a missed call from the president, called him back. I actually texted him back, you want full disclosure? And he called me right back. We discussed for a nanosecond Los Angeles, and he immediately zigged and zagged into 7 or 8 other topics. Some extraordinarily familiar and some extraordinarily remarkable, considering the world we're living in.
So how did you find out?
I learned about it when I saw some tweet about Governor Newsom, a nickname, by the way, that's hardly original. There was an 8th grader on Baltimore Street in Corte Madera that used to call me that. And the reference to the National Guard being commandeered in that same tweet. That's how I learned about it.
Governor, are you confident for them to stand on appeal, especially against the Supreme Court?
Well, I'm confident in the rule of law. I'm confident in the Constitution of the United States. I'm confident in the wisdom and judgment of a very well-respected federal judge. And I'm confident on the basis of the review of the 36 pages absolutely, it will stand.
Governor, does this order go even further than you expected? I think your attorneys had asked for them to simply be restricted to federal buildings.
I'll just say we're extraordinarily pleased by the 36-page ruling of Justice Breyer.
Can you speak to some of the journalists who have been, about some of the journalists in LA who have been hit with rubber bullets or?
Well, there's two investigations. The one we initiated with the California Highway Patrol, and there's one that has been initiated independent by the LAPD. And people should feel safe. Reporters absolutely should feel safe. And we'll get to the bottom of it. I don't want to prejudge, but I'm concerned about them. That's why we advanced the investigations.
Governor, today in San Francisco, immigration attorneys tell us that there were 3 additional folks who were detained while heading into the ICE court offices on Sansom. This is some of just many detentions we've seen at courthouses and immigration offices in the Bay Area around the state. And many of these people, their attorneys are telling us they have complicated technical cases. What are your thoughts about seeing these detentions occurring in your communities around California?
Well, he's on. Let's just dispense. It's not about criminals. If it's about criminals, got no beef with me. We want to secure our border. We need comprehensive immigration reform. We need a pathway to citizenship for people being here 10, 15, 20 years, contributing, paying their taxes, being remarkable members of our community. But that's not what this is about. I was in Oxnard, California, and Ventura County yesterday, met with 3 people directly impacted by indiscriminate raids. I met a 12-year-old boy in 6th grade, weeping, crying, tears pouring down his face. His mother and father were both detained. They disappeared. He has no brothers, no sisters, no family. He quite literally is on his own, abandoned. That's Donald Trump's America. 20 plus years his mom and dad working in the same fields, doing the same packing and shipping. 20 plus years. They've disappeared. 12-year-old boy. You saw the images of ICE officers running through strawberry fields. CBP helicopters above. I met a woman, a single mother, who was walking out at 5:45 a.m. to get in her car. 7 agents surrounded her. They took her in a car, in essence kidnapping her, driving her around for almost 2 hours until she finally convinced the agent, because she has 3 young children, a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, and an 8-year-old, that they needed to get to school, and there's no one to help them get to school. She was finally allowed to call her oldest daughter, who was interrogated by the agent and threatened. And they threatened her after they dropped her off, said, "We may be back." Terrorizing this single mother. No criminal record, no criminal background. I met another young woman whose husband has quite literally disappeared. No criminal record. She doesn't know what to do. She doesn't even know what happened. That was just yesterday. That's Donald Trump's America. Agricultural workers. Think about that when you have dinner tonight. Think about when you enjoy your first course. Have some fresh fruit, some fresh vegetables. Who provided those? Who supported you? None. Think about it when you go home and the construction around your property. Maybe you're getting a remodel. Who's doing that work? Destroying not only the foundations of our democracy, the best, again, of the Roman Republic and Greek democracy, but now our economy is at risk because of the recklessness and the cruelty of Donald Trump, the indiscriminate cruelty of Donald Trump. Why else do you go to a 7-Eleven? Why else do you go to a nail salon? Why else do you just randomly show up in front of a hardware store? Why else? It's not about criminals. That's about creating chaos. And I do not believe the American people, the majority of the American people, support that. Quite the contrary. And so this decision was important because it's about constraints, it's about limits, it's about our democracy. And that's why we're very grateful by the order.
Thank you. President Trump does not abide by this order.
Well, I think the courts will. I think that's, look, I'm counting on these separations of power. It's the co-equal branches of government. Co-equal, Mr. President, branches of government. He's eliminated one, or they eliminated themselves. That's called Congress. Speaker Johnson, who his eloquence was elevated when he called to, quote unquote, tar and feather the governor of California. That's the speaker. Very religious man. I guess that's the spirit.
Join one of our great states. And if I didn't get involved, if we didn't bring the Guard in, and we would bring more in if we needed it, because we have to make sure there's going to be law and order. You had a disaster happening, and they now admit it was a disaster. I watched the chief yesterday, who's a good man, by the way, and he said, well, we're lucky we did this because they were overwhelmed. You saw what was happening. So we did the right thing. Everybody agrees to that. But you have a governor who let the city burn down, didn't want water to be sent down to him. I sent billions of gallons of water. I wanted to do it in the first term. He wouldn't do it over, I don't know, they have environmental reasons, but there were no environmental reasons. I think it's just a political philosophy. But it's lucky for the people in Los Angeles and in California that we did what we did. We got it just in time. It's still simmering a little bit, but not very much. Yeah, please.
Have you gotten
A crime has he committed? I think his primary crime is running for governor because he's done such a bad job. What he's done to that state is like what Biden did to this country. And that's pretty bad. It's the wrong philosophy.
Oh, wow. It's always somebody's fault except his. Come on now.
Thousands of illegal immigrants, many of them prisoners. They're taking up your health care. They're taking up your space in schools. They're taking up your hospital. And in many cases, they're criminals. And we have to do something about it. And we're doing something about it. I want to thank the incredible patriots of ICE and Tom Holman, who has been incredible, and Kristi Noem, likewise incredible. The job they're doing. And it's like an unforced error. There was no reason for this. 21 million people were allowed into our country, and many of those people were criminals. And it's a shame. It's a shame. But we're getting them out. And I will say, I think it's a 95-5 issue, just like so many other issues, 95-5. And the Democrats lost an election in a landslide because they're on the wrong side of the issues. I mean, it's not even conceivable that somebody would do the kind of things that he did. And then, you talk about projects. They want to build a train going from San Francisco to LA, and it's costing hundreds of billions of dollars more than they thought it was going to cost. It's not even believable. To Brad and to people sitting here, would you believe that a train, it was going to cost X dollars and it might be 100 times X?
Would have paid for this for about 50 million American children.
You're right.
50 million American children instead of a 3-mile train track that never got built.
We could have put Lincoln in charge with no experience. He would have done a good job. I guarantee you that. All right, please, Peter.
Mr. President, have you gotten an update from your
Peter.
negotiating?
Thank you, President Trump. So it seems like Gavin Newsom likes the attention that he's getting right now from you.
Yeah,
it seems like he does. If you look at recent history, somebody who was running for president, who got arrested and had a mugshot, you could make the argument that politically that wound up helping you. Are you worried at all at this moment that talking about him getting arrested could be helpful to his political prospects? Because a lot of people think he wants to be sitting right where you are.
Well, in my case, it was a witch hunt, and everybody knew it. And I was able to explain that during the process. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. And it was a total witch hunt. It's proven to be a witch hunt, and you see what's happened. In his case, it really is very obvious. You look at what's happened between the fires, I could name 10 things right now. We talk about the trains. We talk about all of the costs in California. You talk about all of the people that are flowing and destroying
Please hit the like button.
Else. So, no, I don't think it's going to help him. I think it's
double tap your screen on your phone.
Right around the time that we were walking in here, the governor and the state attorney general said that they're going to sue you for sending the National Guard in. They're saying there's no invasion, there's no rebellion. The president is trying to manufacture chaos and crisis on the ground for his own political ends. Federalizing the California National Guard is an abuse of the president's authority under law.
Well, it's interesting. You watched the same clips as I did. burning all over the place, people rioting. And by the way, we stopped it. We were able to make it much better, but it still looked pretty bad. And in watching clips last night, people were saying this is really a big problem. And until we went in, if we didn't do the job, that place would be burning down just like the houses burned down. They were in big trouble last night, Peter. You know it. And the night before, and the night before that. And I feel we had no choice. I don't want to see happen what happened so many times in this country. I watched Minneapolis burn. Look at what happened in so many different parts of California. You take a look at what happened in San Diego. There's so many different places where we let it burn. We want to be politically correct. We wanted to be nice. We want to be nice to the criminal. And what you're doing is destroying the fabric of our life in this country. No, we did the right thing. We've been given credit by people that I would least suspect. Why I would say that some of the people that came in and said, thank goodness, they said, some of them, thank God that Trump got involved. And I'm very happy I got involved. And I think Gavin, in his own way, is probably happy I got involved. Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
What do you make of the fact that he says, you want a civil war on the streets of America?
No, it's just the opposite. I don't want a civil war. Civil war would happen if you left it to people like him. And I liked him. You know, I always got along with him. Never had a problem with him. But he's grossly incompetent. Okay.
Negotiators in London. Have you gotten an update team in London negotiating?
What? Louder.
Have you gotten an update from your team in London negotiating the China trade talks?
We are doing well with China. China's not easy, just like your home country is not easy there. I think we're doing very well. They're over there now. I'm only getting good reports. It's literally, but they'll be calling in soon. In fact, probably when I get back, I'll have my first call from them. We want to open up China. And if we don't open up China, maybe we won't do anything, but we want to open up China. It'll be a great thing for China, a great thing for the rest of the world.
Are you willing to lift export controls when it comes to China? Did you give your negotiators any sort of limitations?
We're going to see. Look, China has been ripping off the United States for many years. Nobody charged them 10 cents. No president had the courage to charge China for whatever reason. They didn't want to do it. I took in hundreds of billions of dollars. I put on tariffs on China when I got in first term. And we took in hundreds of billions of dollars. And then I did it again, but I did it for a lot of others. If you look at the stats, the deficit last month was cut in half. Everybody was shocked. I wasn't shocked. I think a lot of the people at this table weren't, because they saw the billions of dollars that were pouring in, and the tariffs hadn't even started yet, just about. There weren't cars. They were in some countries at a very minor level. And we cut the deficit in half. And it was a big story a couple of days ago. They said, I don't believe, one of the announcers on a business network went wild, said, I can't believe these numbers. Those numbers are good. The numbers are going to be very good. I think we're going to have a great 4 years. You know, we had the greatest economy in history during my 4 years. I think this one's going to blow it away. Yeah. Go ahead,
do you have a message for Greta Thunberg, and did she come up on your call with the Prime Minister today?
Well, she's a strange person. She's a young, angry person. I don't know if it's real anger. It's hard to believe, actually, but I saw what happened. She's certainly different. Anger management. I think she has to go to an anger management class. That's my primary recommendation for her.
By Israel, as she says? Was she kidnapped?
I find it. I think Israel has enough problems without kidnapping Greta Thunberg.
And secondly, are you going to
Is that what she said? She was kidnapped by Israel?
Yes, sir. Are you going to get rid of the Tesla and the Starlink service that you have here at the White House?
No, I haven't heard that. I mean, I may move the Tesla around a little bit, but I don't think we'll be doing that with Starlink. It's a good service.
Where are you going to move it to? Move it around. What do you mean?
I have a lot of locations.
Actually, about the Tesla.
I got so many locations, I don't know what to do with them all.
About the Tesla, did you ever see Elon Musk get physical with the Treasury Secretary?
No, I didn't.
And I tried to
I did have an argument, but I didn't see. I didn't see a lot of physicality there.
New York Times report that he did not want to talk about Elon Musk. But alleged that
those
he,
tiny
towards the end of his
hands
time in the White
and
House,
big head.
was blurring the
It's
lines
orange,
between
ain't it?
recreational use of drugs and medicinal. Do you think he ever had drugs here at the White House?
I really don't know. I don't think so. I hope not. Look, I wish him well. You understand. We had a good relationship, and I just wish him well. Very well, actually. Yeah.
About aid in Gaza, you mentioned now the flotilla. Do you have a response at all about Israel intercepting this boat? And can you give us an update on what's happening to the entry of aid into Gaza right now? We've had people being shot by Israeli forces who are trying to get aid from the
right
Gaza
now,
Humanitarian Foundation. Yes.
Gaza right now is in the midst of a massive negotiation between us and Hamas and Israel, and Iran actually is involved. And we'll see what's going to happen with Gaza. We want to get the hostages back. That's all I can tell you. Yeah, please, in the back.
Places on Truth Social a bit later, who said they were insurrectionists. After what you said,
You're talking about in LA?
Yes, sir, in LA.
I wouldn't call it quite an insurrection, but it could have led to an insurrection. I mean, that was a lot of harm that was going on last night. I watched it very closely. And it was amazing that the job that the National Guard did. And by the way, the police were working very hard also. But, you know, the police are given instructions to be politically correct. I said, no, you don't have to be politically correct. You have to do the job.
Anytime soon. I know some.
Which one?
On Elon Musk. Do you plan to speak to him on the phone anytime soon?
I haven't really thought about it, actually. I would imagine he wants to speak to me. I would think so. If I were him, I'd want to speak to me, but maybe he was already called. You'd have to ask him whether or not he's already called. But I'd have no problem with it. Well, I don't want to say that, but but I would imagine he'd want to talk to me.
Mr. President.
Yeah, please. Yeah, please. Proposal from Iran today. Have you gotten that proposal? And what is the main impediment? We have a meeting with Iran on Thursday, so we're going to wait till Thursday. And what's the main impediment to getting a deal? Well, they're just asking for things that you can't do. They don't want to give up what they have to give up. You know what that is. They seek enrichment. We can't have enrichment. We want just the opposite. And so far, they're not there. I hate to say that because the alternative is a very, very dire one, but they're not there. They have given us their thoughts on the deal, and I said, it's just not acceptable. I would say, yeah. I don't know what else I can talk about the weather.
Well, you can talk about Lebanon.
Pretty much that's the main topic, yeah.
Mr. President.
We talked about Lebanon also, yeah, we did. Well, Lebanon's working very hard. They have a great new ambassador that I put there, man I know very well. He's very smart. I didn't even know he was Lebanese. And I said, why would you want Lebanon? He said, I was born there. I love it. I love the people. I said, it's very dangerous going to Lebanon. There are some ambassadorships that are wonderful. There are some that are dangerous. I said, Michel, his name is, it's a he, Michel, very elegant man. And I said, why would you want this? And he said, because
Caitlin Clark, graded assists. Cambridge, graded assists for your savings.
And he wanted to be the ambassador despite probably a very dangerous situation he's going into. You see what's going on. But I had great respect for that. He loves that country. He loves it. He was born there. He loves the country. Yeah.
Mr. President, you've got a big, beautiful parade coming up on Saturday.
We do.
What's your biggest expectations for that? And I've got a second question in regards to Gavin Newsom. Go ahead and talk about the big, beautiful parade.
Thank you, Brian. It's such a, I think, important moment for this country. 2 weeks ago, I was calling people and back and forth with leaders, including President Putin, including French president, including lots of different people. And all of them said, we're celebrating victory in World War II. And I said, wow, isn't that amazing? We're the only one that wasn't celebrating, and we're the one that won the war. Now, Russia did help. They did lose 51 million people, in all fairness. People would say, oh, he's sticking up for Russia. No, they lost 51 million people. And You know, we can't forget that. But France was celebrating. And as you know, Hitler made a speech at the Eiffel Tower. But when I spoke to President Macron, he said, oh, we are celebrating the great victory of World War II. And I think that's great that he was doing it. But we're the one that won it, and we weren't celebrating. I said to myself, you know, isn't that crazy? And I think it's time for us to celebrate a little bit. You know, we've had a lot of victories. We won 2 world wars, and then we go out and change the name of the forts where we won the wars. You go out, we win world wars from Fort Robert E. Lee, from Fort Bragg, from all the different forts. And what do? We change the name of the forts because we want to be politically correct. So a lot of them we're changing back. You probably noticed Fort Bragg and others. But I think it's a time to celebrate our military. You know, we've rebuilt our military largely. A little low on ammunition. That's because it goes out very fast to other countries, one in particular, but we'll get that back very quickly. But we have a military the likes of which nobody has. Nobody comes close. We have the best equipment in the world. We make the best equipment in the world. There's no military like our military. We showed that with ISIS. I was told by the television generals it would take 4 years to win, and we did it in 3 weeks. And it was headed by General Raisin Kane, who's now the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He's great. Just left him. No, I think it's time that we celebrate. And I sort of have to laugh at these people. Well, you know, you're going to spend a lot of money. A lot of that money is being paid for by me and people that make donations. I don't know if you know that. A lot of it won't even come out of the military. I think I can say that, Susie, right? We have people putting up money to do it. Not that it's necessary, because I think it's a great expenditure. We have many tanks. We have all sorts of new ones and very old ones, old from World War I and World War II. It's really a celebration of the Army. So the Army is a year older than the country. So next year we celebrate 250 years, but we're celebrating the Army on Flag Day. And it's not my birthday. It is my birthday, but I'm not celebrating my birthday. I'm celebrating Flag Day. It happens to be the same day, so I take a little heat. But Flag Day is the appropriate date. And we're celebrating 250 years of the Army, a great service. And remember, you know, think of it. We won so much. We won World War I, World War II, so much else. And then we became politically correct. But I can only tell you that I was told that ISIS would take anywhere from 4 to 5 years, and we did it in 3 weeks. You were there, you watched, right? We have the greatest military in the world. Nobody can beat us. As long as we have our right leadership, nobody can beat us. If we have stupid people running it, like you had in Afghanistan, when you look at that, first of all, Afghanistan should have been an easy victory as a war, but we were so sad the way we fought it, so ridiculous. We fight not to win, but we didn't used to be that way. And we're celebrating, because I think the day in Afghanistan was the saddest period of time in the history of our country. That was a Biden mess with bad generals like Milley and others. They were bad. They were incompetent generals. I know all the good ones and the bad ones. We got rid of most of the bad ones. But it was time to celebrate, and that's what we're doing. So it's on June 14th, and it's going to be a parade the likes of which I don't know if we've ever had a parade like that. It's going to be incredible. We have even though it's the Army, we have a lot of those Army airplanes flying over the top, and we have tanks all over the place, and we have thousands and thousands of soldiers going to bravely march down the streets. It's going to be a beautiful day, I think, and we're going to celebrate our country.
You spoke of leadership, and real quickly, speaking of Gavin Newsom, is he the right leader for California, considering how massive their economy is and all these U.S. investments coming in? Is he the right governor and leader for the future of California and for U.S. investments?
I don't think he is. I mean, I think he's done a terrible job. And, you know, he's a guy, I always got along with him. You look at his past statements about me. I was a great president. I always took care of California, you know, all that. But I'm just talking on results. You look, you know, he has the advantage of beautiful weather, maybe the best weather of any state when you think about it. Beautiful weather, beautiful ocean, beautiful everything. You have all the advantages, and he didn't take advantage of that. And he's let people come in by the millions who are overrunning your hospitals, your education system, and your police are being overrun. Look at what's happened. He should only be happy I sent in the military, because if I didn't send them in, you would have had a problem there, the likes of which we haven't seen in a long time. Yeah, please. Thank you, Brian, very much.
Supersonic flight.
Supersonic
Yes,
flight.
sir. I know you just signed an executive order on it. Do you want to see a supersonic Air Force One in the next 10 years or so?
Oh, well, I don't care too much about that, but I would like to see, you know, if you think about it, flight, the word flight's an interesting word, but it's probably the only category where we've actually gone backwards, because we used to have the Concorde and we could fly to London, Brad, very quickly and nicely. And today it takes you 2 times and 3 times as long. It's the only thing where we've regressed. By the way, the Concorde, to my way of thinking, to this day, Michael, because you're very much into aesthetics, I know, but to this day was one of the most beautiful pieces of art I've ever seen. It was a piece of art, the beauty of the Concorde. It was the most beautiful plane, but it was you know, got you there in half the time. Now you spend a lot of time, and there's no reason for it. Because, you know, they have the sonic boom. It's not a huge problem, but they have the sonic boom thing pretty well figured out. The technology changes, the change in the skin, the change in weight, all of the other things. There's no reason why we shouldn't do great. So we are making it possible for them to do supersonic and get us back on the track. I mean, think of it, 30 years ago, we actually had planes that flew much faster than we do now. It took you half the time to get to a location. So we've regressed, and we're going to progress. Right, sort of an amazing thing, isn't it, though? We've gone backwards. On Wall Street, they haven't done that. If Goldman Sachs was like that, you wouldn't have Goldman Sachs anymore. Yeah, please.
In California to address the situation in Los Angeles? Are you going to deploy Marines in California?
We'll see what happens. I mean, I think we have it very well under control. I think it would have been a very bad situation. It was heading in the wrong direction. It's now heading in the right direction. And we hope to have the support of Gavin, because Gavin's the big beneficiary as we straighten out his problems. I mean, his state is a mess. And I'd like to get somebody involved in the rail, because, look, personally, it should have never been built, because you can fly there for $2. And what are you doing? They're doing that. You could drive. You could do lots of different things. You know, if they did a study, if you gave every passenger the finest limousine service in the history of our world, the most expensive chauffeur-driven white glove limousine service back and forth, we would have saved billions of dollars as opposed to building this monstrosity that's going up. And I've never seen anything. You know, I've seen cost overruns. I'm a person, I've always done well on cost overruns. I don't have them. But I will tell you, I have never seen cost overruns. You see them where they're 20% more, 50%, 100% more. These are thousands of percent. Nobody even knows. They have no idea. And it was supposed to be from San Francisco to Los Angeles. Well, they just made it way outside of Los Angeles, where it's stopping in the middle of, I don't want to say nowhere, because I happen to like one of those little cities very much, but it's way short of the destination. And our government is saying, you know, why are we involved in this thing? It's been handled so badly before him, but he really blew it. So, you know, all right, one more question.
Speak to any discussions that were had there and the purpose of that retreat, your time at Camp David?
What?
Your time at Camp David, can you speak to what discussions were had there and the purpose of that retreat?
Well, I don't want to speak to discussions. I mean, I told you what we were there for a little bit. We had discussions on many topics. We had a group of people, large group of people, including generals and admirals and lots of others. And all I can say is our country's in great shape. We're in great shape economically. The bill that Mike and Jason and all the people are working on is going to be, I think, amazing. I think it's going to be one of the most important pieces of legislation we've ever had in this country. It's going to do things that you wouldn't believe. And we're going to, you know, I have a very simple phrase. We ran an election on very simple words: make America great again. That's what we're doing. We're making it great. We're making it safe. We're making it beautiful. And we're making it very wealthy again. You know, wealth is okay. You need wealth to take care of lots of other people. We have to make our country better. It has to heal from 4 years of abuse. Our country was abused badly by a very incompetent person and a group of people that weren't incompetent, but they were radical left lunatics. And they ran the country with an auto pen. And I hope that law enforcement's looking at that very seriously. That's like a takeover of our country in a certain way, because this guy had no idea what he was doing. You saw that during the debate. You saw that in other cases. I mean, he had no idea. I saw it years ago. By the way, 40 years ago, he had no. He was bad 40 years ago. We're not just talking about. And they always like to say age, but it's not age. I know people 88, 89, 92. Bernie Marcus, who just passed away, was 95. I spoke to him a year before. He was 100%. It's not age. It's something else. But whatever it is, you can't have that in this country. The damage he's done to this country is unbelievable. But the good news is we've got much of it fixed already, and the rest of it will happen.
Prime Minister Netanyahu, you just mentioned Iran. Did you discuss Iran? Did you discuss the Gaza war?
Yeah, we discussed a lot of things, and it went very well. Very smooth. We'll see what happens. You know, we're trying to do something with a country we just spoke about, Iran. I think you should negotiate this. You might be better. I think I'm going to send you today. What a good idea. This could have been the idea of the day. We'll have Darren get up and negotiate. They are good negotiators, but they're tough. Sometimes they can be too tough. That's the problem. So we're trying to make a deal so that there's no destruction and death. And we've told them that, and I've told them that, and I hope that's the way it works out, but it might not work out that way. We'll soon find out. Yeah, please.
In 2020, when you were talking about unrest in American cities, you said, quote, "We have to go by the laws. We can't call in the National Guard unless we're requested by a governor." What changed now? Why is this situation different to not consult with Governor Newsom about this?
Well, the biggest change from that statement is we have an incompetent governor. So I talked about governors, but I didn't talk about he's an incompetent governor. Look at the job he's doing in California. He's destroying one of our great states. And if I didn't get involved, if we didn't bring the Guard in, and we would bring more in if we needed it, because we have to make sure there's going to be law and order. You had a disaster happening. And they now admit it was a disaster. I watched the chief yesterday, who's a good man, by the way. And he said, well, we're lucky we did this because they were overwhelmed. You saw what was happening. So we did the right thing. Everybody agrees to that. But you have a governor who let the city burn down, didn't want water to be sent down to him. You know, I sent billions of gallons of water. I wanted to do it in the first term. We wouldn't do it over... I don't know, they have environmental reasons, but there were no environmental reasons. It's, I think it's just a political philosophy. But it's lucky for the people in Los Angeles and in California that we did what we did. We got it just in time. It's still simmering a little bit, but not very much. Yeah, please.
Have you gotten...
What crime has he committed? I think his primary crime is running for governor because he's done such a bad job. What he's done to that state is like what Biden did to this country. And that's pretty bad. It's a wrong philosophy. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants, many of them prisoners. They're taking up your health care. They're taking up your space in schools. They're taking up your hospital. And in many cases, they're criminals. And we have to do something about it, and we're doing something about it. I want to thank the incredible patriots of ICE and Tom Homan, who has been incredible, and Kristi Noem, likewise incredible. The job they're doing, and it's like an unforced error. There was no reason for this. 21 million people were allowed into our country, and many of those people were criminals. And it's a shame. It's a shame, but we're getting them out, and I will say, I think it's a 95-5 issue, just like so many other issues, 95-5. And the Democrats lost an election in a landslide because they're on the wrong side of the issues. I mean, it's not even conceivable that somebody would do the kind of things that he did. And then, you know, you talk about projects. They want to build a train going from San Francisco to LA, and it's costing hundreds of billions of dollars more than they thought it was going to cost. It's not even believable. To Brad and to people sitting here, would you believe that a train, it was going to cost X dollars and it might be 100 times X?
Would have paid for this for about 50 million American children.
You're right.
50 million American children instead of a 3-mile train track that never got built.
We could have put Lincoln in charge with no experience. He would have done a good job. I guarantee you that. All right, please, Peter.
Mr. President, have you gotten an update from your negotiating?
Thank you, President Trump. So it seems like Gavin Newsom likes the attention that he's getting right now from you.
Yeah, I think
It seems like he does. If you look at recent history, somebody who was running for president, you, who got arrested and had a mugshot, you could make the argument that politically that wound up helping you. Are you worried at all at this moment that talking about him getting arrested could be helpful to his political prospects? Because a lot of people think he wants to be sitting right where you are.
Well, in my case, it was a witch hunt, and everybody knew it. And I was able to explain that during the process. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. And it was a total witch hunt. It's proven to be a witch hunt, and you see what's happened. In his case, it really is very obvious. You look at what's happened between the fires, I could name 10 things right now. We talk about the trains. We talk about all of the costs in California. You talk about all of the people that are flowing and destroying life for everyone else. So no, I don't think it's going to help him. I think it's actually very bad for him.
And right around the time that we were walking in here, the governor and the state attorney general said that they're going to sue you for sending the National Guard in. They're saying there's no invasion, there's no rebellion. The president is trying to manufacture chaos and crisis on the ground for his own political ends. Federalizing the California National Guard is an abuse of the president's authority under law.
Well, you know, it's interesting. You watched the same clips as I did. Cars burning all over the place, people riding. And by the way, we stopped it. We were able to make it much better.
Governor Newsom wants them off the streets. In a few hours, he won in court, but less than 90 minutes ago.
Eight-night legal showdown over control of the California National Guard.
That's right. Governor Newsom wants them off the streets. In a few hours, he won in court, but less than 90 minutes ago, a different judge then ruled President Trump still controls the troops, and they must stay for now. Tonight, KCAL political reporter Tom Wade is here, and this is classic move from President Trump.
Legal showdown over control of the California National Guard.
That's right. Governor Newsom wants them off the streets. In a few hours, he won in court, but less than 90 minutes ago, a different judge then ruled President Trump still controls the troops, and they must stay for now. Tonight, KCAL political reporter Tom Wade is here, and this is classic move from President Trump. Lose in one court, immediately appeal in another, right, Tom?
Absolutely, Susie won. And, you know, we've got so much drama playing out in the streets. We have it in the courts. We have it in City Hall. It's just nonstop. So all of this is moving at a dizzying speed tonight. Just hours ago, a judge ruled that Trump broke the law and seizing control of the Guard. Then minutes ago, a second judge ruled the troops still belong to Trump. This battle came after a day-long war of words between Trump's Homeland and LA Mayor Karen Bass over ICE raids. The California National Guard remains in President Trump's control. A late evening appeals court ruling handed him the victory, overturning a federal judge who sided with Governor Newsom just an hour before.
There's no invasion. There's no rebellion. It's absurd.
The judge's ruling comes as Department of Homeland Secretary Kristi Noem arrived in LA, blasting Governor Newsom and LA Mayor Karen Bass after days of protests, claiming the feds won't back down, plan to ramp up their raids, and have names of tens of thousands of people to arrest.
We are not going away. We are staying here to liberate the city from the socialist and the burdensome leadership that this governor and that this mayor have placed on this country.
National Guard troops have not been out in the streets of downtown LA, but they are helping with immigration enforcement operations.
This president has repeatedly said that he's going after criminals and the worst of the worst.
But according to new numbers released by the Trump White House, that statement is false. So far, of the 330 arrests since Friday in Southern California, just 113 have criminal records.
I do not know Kristi Noem that I served with for 10 years.
LA Mayor Karen Bass, surrounded by faith and community leaders, fired back at Secretary Noem, lashing out at her and President Trump for sending in the military.
To characterize what is going on as our city is a city of mayhem is just an outright lie. I'm not going to call it an untruth. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm going to call it for what it is, which is a lie. This is isolated to a few blocks in a city that is over 500 square miles.
Secretary Noem says Trump's decision to send in military to LA is widely supported.
The people across this country are so grateful. They are so grateful for the work that is being done here in Los Angeles.
That statement runs contrary to a new Quinnipiac poll showing 54% of registered voters disapprove of Trump's handling of immigration issues, with 43% approving. Professor of politics Jack Pitney says Noem's incendiary rhetoric raises questions.
The idea that a Secretary of Homeland Security from the state of South Dakota is going to liberate California from the leaders that Californians have selected is pretty odd.
Professor Pitney says Trump branding himself the law and order president is hypocritical, given his own criminal record and his pardons of January 6th rioters who assaulted police officers.
Exactly.
Convicted felon can't be the law and order president.
Facts.
It's that simple. And he has pardoned not only the January 6th insurrectionists, but a lot of other dubious people as well.
And back to the troops. Well, the Trump administration keeps control until Tuesday, when another hearing will be held. California is going to, be back in court with Governor Newsom there. So we'll see where things land. And then we just have days and days ahead of us. This weekend, they're expecting big protests as well. So we'll see how this goes out.
With the Treasury Secretary? No, I didn't.
I tried to.
He did have an argument, but I didn't see. I didn't see a lot of physicality there.
And there was this New York Times report he did not want to talk about, Elon Musk, that alleged that he, towards the end of his time in the White House, was blurring the lines between recreational use of drugs and medicinal. Do you think he ever had drugs here at the White House?
I really don't know. I don't think so. I hope not. Look, I wish him well. You understand. We had a good relationship, and I just wish him well. Very well, actually. Yeah.
Aid in Gaza. You mentioned now the flotilla. Do you have a response at all about Israel intercepting this boat? And can you give us an update on what's happening to the entry of aid into Gaza right now? We've had people being shot by Israeli forces who are trying to get aid from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Yes.
Gaza right now is in the midst of a mass negotiation between us and Hamas and Israel, and Iran actually is involved. And we'll see what's going to happen with Gaza. We want to get the hostages back. That's all I can tell you. Yeah, please, in the back.
You said yesterday when I reported that it was not insurrection taking place, but then on True Social a bit later, you'd said they were insurrectionists. After what you said.
You're talking about in LA?
Yes, sir, in LA.
I wouldn't call it quite an insurrection, but it could have led to an insurrection. I mean, that was a lot of harm that was going on last night. I watched it very closely. And it was amazing that the job that the National Guard did. And by the way, the police were working very hard also. But, the police are given instructions to be politically correct. I said, no, you don't have to be politically correct. You have to do the job.
And on Elon Musk, do you plan to speak to him on the phone anytime soon? I know some.
Which one?
On Elon Musk, do you plan to speak to him on the phone anytime soon?
I haven't really thought about it, actually. I would imagine he wants to speak to me. I would think that. If I were him, I'd want to speak to me, and maybe he's already called. You'd have to ask him whether or not he's already called. But I'd have no problem with it. Well, I don't want to say that, but I would imagine he'd want to talk to me.
Live on MSNBC. First question, how are you? We all watched the video. We saw you taken to the floor by those agents. How are you doing?
Yeah, look, I'm okay. I've been on the phone off and on with kids, right? Because my kids travels fast in this day and age with technology to make sure they're okay. But I think most importantly,
hey, y'all, hit the like button.
Outrage.
Double tap your screen.
If this can happen,
hit the like button.
To a United States Senator
the
for
thumbs up or double tap
the
face of your phone.
Of the Secretary of Homeland Security, the same questions and requests for information that we've had, not just the last sort of week or so of the activity in Los Angeles, but since the beginning of the administration. But just imagine what can happen to anybody in the country, for that matter.
We heard from you briefly at the press conference after you came outside of the federal building in Westwood. We've heard more extensively from Secretary Noem and the Department of Homeland Security, and I want to just tell you a little bit because I'm sure this has been a whirlwind, about what they've been saying. Secretary Noem said that you, quote, lunged towards her at this press conference. The Department of Homeland Security said the Secret Service believed that you were an attacker, and the Department of Homeland Security called this political theater. What's your response, and what's your version of what happened?
Well, first of all, that's ridiculous. It's a lie, but par for the course for this administration, right? So here's the stage. Look, I was in the federal building here in Los Angeles for a scheduled briefing. Just as one of my colleagues and I had to go all the way to Guantanamo Bay to begin to get information about that facility being used as a detention facility. They've been non-responsive to requests for information. And so I had scheduled, they approved a briefing with representatives of the Northern Command in that federal building. We were there prior to the 10:30 original appointment date when we caught wind that Secretary of Homeland Security is going to be down the hall at a press conference. And our briefing was now delayed because of that press conference. So since the secretary has been non-responsive, I figured let me go over and listen to what she has to say. Maybe we can glean some information here.
So let me make sure I understand that.
So the whole time, right? We're the whole time being escorted in this federal building by somebody from the National Guard, somebody from the FBI. I've gone through screening. This is a federal building. And so tell them, let's go listen to the press conference. They escort me over to that room. And I'm sitting in the back of the room behind the cameras, behind the reporters, listening. And at one point, it was just too much to take. Not the first, but the second attack on the political leadership of California and this notion that Donald Trump and Kristi Noem had to come in and rescue the people of Los Angeles from Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass. It was too much. And so I spoke up. I introduced myself. And said I had a question. Look, they said I wasn't wearing my pen. My polo says United States Senate. There was no threat. There was no lunging. I raised my voice to ask a question, and it took maybe half a second before multiple agents were on me.
The video clearly shows, and you can hear on the audio, that you identify yourself as Senator Padilla. She said you barged into the room, or you basically broke into the room. I'm paraphrasing here. Just set the record straight on that.
I didn't barge into the room. As I mentioned, I was in a different conference room, a couple doors down the hall. I let it be known I'd like to go listen to the press conference. The folks that were escorting me in the building walked me over. I didn't even open the door. The door was open for me. And I spent a few minutes in the back of the room just listening in until the rhetoric, the political rhetoric, got to be too much to take. So I spoke up.
Have you seen the video yet? Well, you can look here, Senator. Have you actually watched it yourself? When you watch this, and let's go through this together. Describe to me what you're seeing. What's happening here?
Yeah, again, well, multiple people forcibly removing from the room. I know I was trying to do two things at once, try to get my question out while trying not to lose my balance. They first asked me to, get down on my knees. Like, growing up where I grew up, you know what happens if you don't obey law enforcement. And so I began to go on my knees to the extent that they would let me, because they were literally handling me at the same time. And it went from getting on their knees to flat on the floor, which I tried but wasn't able to easily because of the folks handling me. They put handcuffs on me. So yes, I was handcuffed.
These are FBI agents. Did they tell you who they were?
They wouldn't identify themselves. And I kept repeatedly asking themselves, why am I being detained? No answer. Why am I being detained? No answer. Why am I being detained? No answer. Then they get me back up on my feet and we start walking. Don't tell me where we're going.
You were handcuffed at this point?
Absolutely. Am I being led back outside? I don't know. Am I being taken to a cell? I don't know. They were not communicative until somebody from, I'm sure, Secretary Noem's team figured out I was who I said I was and finally said, let him go.
So they let you go. They took the handcuffs off. What happened next? There were reports that you met with Secretary Noem for 15 minutes after the press conference was over.
So this is a little surreal. So they took the handcuffs off. The person that came over said, well, if you'd like to meet with the secretary, you can do so after the press conference is over. Sure. I've been dying to get information from the department for months. I'll take this opportunity and see what I can glean. Then I was asked, but the other briefing that you're here for, the previously scheduled briefing, would you still like that briefing? Of course. That's why we came. That one never happened because the representatives from Northern Command left. And again, didn't give us an excuse. So hope for another opportunity to learn from them. Like, again, what's the mission of the National Guard here? What training have what's normally state National Guard is now federalized National Guard service women and men, if they're going to be out in communities, if they're going to be interfacing with civilians. This is not a normal job for them. And by the way, they're being taken away from other critical missions in the state of California to do this function. Now we hear the Marines are coming. For what purpose? What's the mission? What type of training preparation have they had?
Did you get answers to any of these questions?
None. And so, again, did have an opportunity to sit with the Secretary Noem for a few minutes. You'd think she might have started the meeting with an apology. What happened? Of course not. And so I began to ask the question I was trying to ask in the press conference. For all the touting of the Trump administration of going after violent criminals, I told her, there's no disagreement there. If that's all you were doing, there would be no debate, there would be no discussion. But what's happening in reality is far different than that, because we hear story after story after story of non-violent migrants who many are working in very essential jobs for our economy, being rounded up, right? The cruelty with which they're doing this, the increased cruelty with which they're doing this, escalating here in Los Angeles over the course of the last week. You don't need flashbangs, when you're trying to target one person. The National Guard over, not at the request of a governor. It hasn't happened since 1965. And so, of course, they're instigating, trying to create the response and a reaction from community, and we'll point to anything to further escalate the situation. It's wrong, and it's counterproductive.
Senator Padilla, we're here on my colleague Ari Melber's program, The Beat, on MSNBC, and I know Ari wants to ask you a question. Ari, go right ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Jacob, and thanks to the Senator for joining us. You've now described the incident here for the first time. Do you view it as excessive force? As Jacob referenced, the administration is saying they were trying to basically do safety or security. Do you view it as excessive force or an effort to intimidate the opposition party?
Look, personally, I think it was excessive. I was in no way, lunging or threatening in any way. Again, consider where we were, in a secure federal building. I was being escorted. So definitely an overreaction, uncalled for, but it's not about me. Again, this is the biggest point. It's not about me. If they're willing to do this to me, a United States senator representing the state of California, just to imagine how it's going with their immigration enforcement on the streets when they show up at restaurants and are trying to detain a cook, or outside a Home Depot trying to detain a day laborer, or on the fields in Oxnard a couple of days ago detaining farm workers. You can just imagine. But that's a tone and approach that this administration has chosen to take. In many cases, I'm convinced it's unlawful and unconstitutional. And I have to do my job as a senator to insist on information and accountability and the rule of law.
And Senator, what do you think would be the right remedy then for this? We saw in the case of the mayor of Newark, who was, like you, sort of, as you, the one word used was manhandled. He was arrested. He was charged. You were not. But then they dropped the case. He's suing them, seeking redress. Do you see this incident as closed, or do you think there is something more they must do to properly respect the co-equal branch of government at a time where the expansive use of federal forces from the National Guard to the Marines is also, beyond you, a big question? Do you think that more must be done, more accountability for the Trump administration for what happened today?
Look, again, it's not about me. I'm still processing what happened to me. But to the extent that we have shed more light on what they're doing and how they're doing it, the public deserves to be aware. To suggest that they have to come into Los Angeles to restore order. Look, Jacob, you know Los Angeles. It's a big, spread out city. The images that we've seen over the course of the last week of some vandalism, some violence, etc., that's wrong, and I denounce it. But it's very small and very contained in a big metropolis of the Los Angeles area. So the National Guard was not necessary.
Okay, y'all, if
but
y'all can't
folks
get,
are
if I
responding to
need
that.
12
It's Trump
likes,
administration continuing to
or
escalate.
I'm
A couple
gonna
days
have
ago,
to end
he's
this
saying that,
live. Come
well,
on,
things are
y'all. I
better
need
now
12
that the National Guard
likes.
has shown
Double
up. If
tap
they were
your
things were better, why
screen
is he now
on
considering
your
sending
phone
in the
or hit the
Marines? They're
thumbs up
continuing to
button
escalate.
on
It
your
doesn't have to
computer.
be this way.
Can you clarify for us, Senator Padilla, you were there to have this
Please.
meeting with the Northern Command in charge of some of the troops that are on the ground here in Los Angeles. Did you ultimately have that meeting, and did you ultimately get any answers from Northern Command about, for instance, there's this hearing in the courts today, the state of California is suing the administration over the deployment of the troops to California. Did you get any indication one way or another whether Northern Command, the military, would respect the outcome of what Judge Breyer says in this court case today?
Well, that was one of the questions I had for them. But unfortunately, the briefing never happened, and so we never got an answer to that question.
Your colleagues are marching to the office of Leader Thune to demonstrate on your behalf, to call for justice for what happened to you. But those are your Democratic colleagues. Have you heard anything from a single Republican member of the U.S. Senate or the House about what happened to you?
Haven't spoken to my Republican colleagues yet. I will say there's two that at least sent a text message saying that they denounced what happened, checking to see if I'm okay. Senator Sheehy from Montana, Senator Curtis from Utah. But the point is this: if my colleagues are now at Leader Thune's office, this is a question I've been asking all my Republican colleagues since the beginning of Trump's term. When is enough enough? The audacity for how this administration has gone after their political agenda. You know, when I hear behind closed doors, well, once he gets, crosses a certain line, then we're going to start to rein him in. But they keep saying yes to every ask he makes, every nominee he puts forward. When is enough enough? When they feel no repercussions for putting a United States senator in handcuffs for the audacity to ask a question and to speak up for fundamental rights and due process. When is enough enough?
You became emotional when you came outside and spoke after this happened to you. And I want to make sure that I tell everybody specifically what it was that you were talking about when you teared up. You talked about farmers and cooks and day laborers. You spoke in Spanish. I've heard you often speak about your father, who was a short order cook, and your mother, who cleaned homes. You grew up here in the Northeast San Fernando Valley in a neighborhood called Pacoima. You played baseball in high school. You went to MIT, and you came back and you became the leader of the city council, the youngest ever, first Latino. You went to the state Senate. You became the Secretary of State of California, and now you're the senior senator from California. But why is it that? Why is it farmers and cooks and day laborers that put tears in your eyes?
Because I understand their plight. I understand their struggle. I understand their sacrifice to just find the American dream, a good opportunity, maybe a good job, the ability to raise a family and have the next generation have it a little bit better than you. And so for all the talk about immigration, the misinformation, disinformation about the invasions and insurrections, it's all BS coming from Trump. As I said before, if all they were going to do is target violent, dangerous criminals, true threats to our national security, that'd be one thing. Nobody has a disagreement there. But what's happening in practice is so many, yes, maybe undocumented immigrants, but who are otherwise law-abiding, peaceful, and hardworking. To think this administration changed policy for federal agents to enter schools.
Dan Chevrolet is your Tracks and Trailblazer headquarters in Kansas City. Our lot is stocked with an impressive selection of new
houses of worship, let alone workplaces. If immigrants are that bad, why is that where you're looking for them? And as I take a step back and take a deep breath, I get to remind everybody, this is the state of California. Not only the most populous state in the nation, the most diverse state in the nation, home to more immigrants than any state in the nation, mostly documented immigrants, legal immigrants, but yeah, there's a good number of undocumented immigrants. But this is also California, that's the largest economy of any state in the nation, fourth largest economy in the world. It's not despite the immigrant population, it's because of the contributions of so many immigrants as a workforce, as consumers, as entrepreneurs. If your interest is in improving safety of communities, facilitating thriving communities and economic growth, this is something to embrace, not to attack. But sadly, Donald Trump has had it since the first time he came down the escalator at Trump Tower before the 2016 election.
Your mom and your dad were both immigrants from Mexico. When you look at the protesters on the streets that are standing up to, they started on Friday against the ICE raids. Now they're out there against the National Guard and against the Marines coming to the streets. Do you see yourself? Do you see your mom and dad and the protesters that are out there pushing back against this administration?
Yeah, I see not just families like mine, but families like most of the families that I grew up with. All right. And that was me back in 2006 during one of the many waves of a push for the modernization of our immigration laws. That was me in 1994, fresh home from college when we had Proposition 187 on the ballot here in California, a precursor to a lot of the Trump anti-immigrant rhetoric when then Governor Pete Wilson, down in the polls, up for re-election, chose to play that immigrant scapegoating card. It was that measure that caused people like my parents who had been here literally for decades with no sense of urgency to naturalize and become citizens to finally do so that they could register and vote, realizing that while their past may be in another country, they were firmly established here, their future was here, and they ought to assimilate completely. And it was that measure that got me and so many of the people in my generation finally involved in the political process. I think California, as a result, is much different today than it was in 1994. And we're proudly doing our part to lead not just on immigrant rights issues, but access to healthcare issues, quality of education issues, tackling climate change, protecting, reproductive rights in marriage equality, and so much more. And we're the fourth largest economy in the world. Again, this is a model, a recipe, a playbook for other states, if not the country, to follow, not fear.
Both Mayor Bass and Governor Newsom, who have stood up on your behalf, spoken out on your behalf in the wake of this happening to you, have talked about how they believe that this is in some form a test case for the Trump administration to do this in other places, in other cities, to ignore the will of the people and the democracy, the democratically elected representatives of the United States government. Do you share that feeling?
Absolutely. And we've been saying so almost on a daily basis since the escalation, the Trump escalation of last week, and whether it's press events, whether it's in committee, whether it's in floor speeches in the Senate, because if you look at how the administration has gone about trying to justify, unacceptably in my opinion, but trying to justify the federalization of the National Guard, the deployment of the National Guard over the wishes of, forget the governor and the mayor for a second, the sheriff of Los Angeles County and the chief of police of Los Angeles City. The language that they've used, the mechanisms they use are not Los Angeles specific. And they're not California specific. And if they're allowed to do this in Los Angeles, they can and they will do this in any corner of the country.
You made it a point to encourage people to protest this Saturday outside of the federal building. Peacefully. Why did you, it was the last thing that you said after you came out, you encouraged people to go out and take to the streets as part of these large-scale rallies that have been playing out in Los Angeles on the streets, but also on Saturday scheduled across the nation. Why did you make that your final thought and parting words from the federal building today?
Because, look, I was at the Emergency Operations Center last night getting the latest brief from Chief McDonald and other members of the city family. And from what I've heard from county officials, state officials, and now local officials, things seem to be quieting somewhat during the course of this week, but the chatter that's out there is people are getting ready for a number of protest events this weekend that coincide with not just the anniversary of the Army, but this vanity parade in Washington, D.C. And so First Amendment rights are a beautiful thing, and they need to be utilized. There's a lot of passion out there in some quarters, a lot of fear and anxiety in other quarters, a lot of outrage in other quarters. It's very patriotic to channel that and to speak up and to demonstrate. Let's do it peacefully, because that is our right. That's how maybe we shift public opinion, but we can't cower. That's what Donald Trump, he wants us to stay quiet and just stay home.
I know you spend your weekends here in Los Angeles. You're going to be out there this weekend on Saturday?
We'll see, because given the developments of today, we'll see how folks are feeling.
And physically, just want before we go, are you doing okay? Are you hurting? How are you feeling?
I think the adrenaline's still rushing right now, so we may not know till till tomorrow.
Senator Alex Padilla, thank you so much for joining us here first on MSNBC. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
The tour poster's here. They must have ordered 1 inch by 2 inches.
I hate it. I wish I had my angry eyebrows on.
I thought we told her to use U-printing.
The people at uprinting.com don't just help you print. They help you print like a pro. So whether you want to impress your fans or grow your business, choose uprinting when it has to be right the first time.
Hi there, it's Dr. Chad Walding, co-founder of NativePath. We look at collagen differently than other supplement companies. It's so much more than a supplement. Collagen is a staple, and it's been lost in our modern diet. In contrast to our modern ways of eating, our ancestors consumed whole animal sources, nose to tail, ensuring they benefited from a wider array of nutrients, like collagen found in organ meats and bones. Today, collagen is virtually non-existent in our diet. So why does that matter? Our bones, joints, skin, hair, nails, and gut lining are all made of collagen. And starting in our early 30s, our ability to produce collagen decreases. Without collagen in our diet, our body begins losing it faster than we can replace it. As a result, bone loss, joint pain, wrinkles, and hair loss can occur. But that's why we created NativePath grass-fed collagen. It's clear that optimal collagen levels benefit every aspect of your health, and it's our mission to make it more accessible than ever. But it's not just about accessibility, it's about purity and potency. That's why the only ingredient listed on our label is collagen. In fact, we are one of the only single ingredient collagen products on the market. And that ingredient is 100% grass-fed bovine collagen. Grass-fed bovine is rich in type 1 and 3 collagen. I consider these to be the most beneficial, versatile collagen types for overall health and anti-aging benefits. Type 1 collagen makes up about 90% of the collagen in the body. It is the primary form in skin, bones, joints, and other connective tissues. Supplementing with type 1 collagen can help reduce visible signs of aging by improving skin elasticity and reducing fine lines and wrinkles. It also supports healthy hair and nails. Type 3 is the second most abundant form, working in tandem with type 1. It provides the structural support to organs, arteries, muscles, and bone. Type 3 also plays a key role in encouraging new collagen production. Together, types 1 and 3 create a powerful combination to combat aging both inside and out. And because our collagen comes from happy, healthy grass-fed cattle, this ensures you're getting the highest quality source that's as close to nature as possible. That's what being on the path is all about. It's about eating, moving, and living in alignment with your biology and with nature. And because your bones, joints, skin, nails, hair, and gut lining are all made of collagen, it's important that you're adding it back into your diet. So if you're ready to experience the difference yourself, try NativePath grass-fed collagen today.
Mr. Jeffries, thank you very much for joining us tonight. There is so much for you to consider for us. First of all, let's begin with Governor Newsom and his big victory in court tonight. This decision that I've read by the judge just finds in the governor's favor all the way through, ordering the California National Guard back under the command of Gavin Newsom.
It's a big victory for the people of California, for the governor, for the rule of law, and for democracy itself. Donald Trump had engaged in aggressive overreach. There was never a need for this deployment. Things were being managed by the LAPD, the California Highway Patrol, as well as local Los Angeles County sheriffs. We all object and reject
any efforts to assault police officers, to be disruptive, to engage in unlawful and unruly behavior. That was not the issue here. The issue is how do we make sure that we can continue to protect the peaceful assembly that is guaranteed by the United States Constitution as part of the right of every American to petition their government to try to get grievances redressed.
The Judge Breyer, Charles Breyer, very carefully reviewed every single event that has happened there that could be called in any way close to violent. Every single thing, every mango that was thrown, every bottle that was thrown, every fire in a dumpster that happened, the fires of those driverless cars that happened over the weekend. And he concluded that none of that was beyond the control of LAPD, and in fact described exactly how local officials, local law enforcement brought all of those situations under control relatively quickly, thereby proving, just in terms of what actually has been happening in Los Angeles, that it was completely under control and no federal support was needed. So he has that finding in addition to Donald Trump illegally ordered those troops to move into Los Angeles.
It was an extremely meticulous decision, and this was all about political theater for Donald Trump. He doesn't want the American people to lock in on the fact that he's collapsing the economy. He's failed to lower costs. The GOP tax scam is going to rip away health care for more than 16 million people, snatch food out of the mouths of children and seniors and veterans, all in service of giving their billionaire donors massive tax breaks. These are all deeply unpopular things. And so Donald Trump wanted to create a massive distraction in this particular instance. If Donald Trump really believed that we were on the verge of insurrection, then he wouldn't have attended a Broadway play last evening at the Kennedy Center. He would have been in a situation room. Instead, he was out on a night on the town. So this was a fraudulent thing that Donald Trump and his minions at the Department of Homeland Security had engaged in, and it's now all been exposed in a meticulous decision by Judge Breyer.
I mean, you know, I said at the outset when Donald Trump first sent the troops to Los Angeles that this was specifically to try to get us to turn our cameras to Los Angeles and away from those senators walking down the halls in Washington who have not been able to come to an agreement on how to do the Trump budget bill in the Senate and to take the focus away from that bill. What are we going to find? What are voters going to find when they put their focus back on this bill and what this bill is trying to do to voters?
You know, Brendan Boyle, the top Democrat, in the House on the Budget Committee, has done a tremendous job of pointing out, one, this is the largest cut to Medicaid in American history, on top of the largest cut to nutritional assistance in American history, all in service of trying to bring about the largest set of tax breaks for billionaires in American history. It's extraordinary. And they are going to increase the debt and the deficit by trillions of dollars, force our children and grandchildren to pay for it. And as a result of this one big ugly bill, hospitals will close, nursing homes will shut down, community-based health clinics are not going to be able to operate. People are going to die because of the lack of being able to receive the medical service that they need. And so Trump is certainly trying to hide the ball from the American people, but this is a disgusting abomination. And the more the American people learn about the GOP tax scam, the worse it gets for them.
Senator Alex Padilla obviously became the news of the day in Washington when that video spread of him being attacked like that in a federal building, a completely secure federal building that you have to go through metal detectors and have an appointment to get into. Here's a United States senator in a federal building being attacked by federal agents with a cabinet secretary looking on, lying about California while that was happening. Where were you when you first saw that video, and what was your reaction, maybe holding your phone in your hand looking at that video?
It was disgusting when the news broke. I was on the Hill. We were preparing for a series of votes on the floor of the House. And when you looked at the video, first of all, to know Senator Padilla, he is just a kind and decent person, a salt of the earth type of individual. He has an extraordinary story, humble beginnings, eventually became an engineer, MIT educated, and then walked away from what could have been a very lucrative career in order to serve his community and ultimately his state. And to see him assaulted in this fashion, manhandled, and then for the secretary to lie about it and the Department of Homeland Security, these people have zero credibility. And so the California delegation, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, every single part of the House Democratic Caucus stands in solidarity with Senator Padilla. If they can attack a sitting senator in his home state in this fashion, just imagine what they have in store for the American people. That's why all of us should be concerned. All of us need to push back. And all of us need to stand up for the principle that in the United States of America, there are no kings.
Senator Padilla has insisted that this story is not about him. It's what it means to the rest of us. It's what it means about the people who the ICE agents and the federal agents are going after every day. Let's listen to what Senator Padilla said when he came out of that federal building after becoming the first United States senator in history to be manhandled, pushed by federal agents, thrown to the ground, and handcuffed for speaking. That has never happened before in American history. Let's listen to what Senator Padilla said when he emerged from the federal building today.
I came to the press conference to hear what she had to say, to see if I could learn any new additional information. And at one point, I had a question. And let me emphasize, just as we've emphasized the right for people to peacefully protest and to stand up for their First Amendment rights, for our fundamental rights. I was there peacefully. At one point, I had a question. And so I began to ask a question. I was almost immediately forcibly removed from the room. I was forced to the ground, and I was handcuffed. I was not arrested. I was not detained. I will say this. If this is how this administration responds to a senator with a question, if this is how the Department of Homeland Security responds to a senator with a question, you can only imagine what they're doing to farm workers, to cooks, to day laborers out in the Los Angeles community and throughout California and throughout the country. Pero una gran pregunta es esta. Si esta es la reacción a un senador con una pregunta, imagínense lo que están haciendo con cocineros, jornaleros, campesinos y otros inmigrantes no violentos en la comunidad de Los Ángeles, en otras áreas del estado de California y en el país.
Leader Jeffries, that statement about just imagine what they're doing to other people if this is what they do to United States senators does seem to be the lesson of the day.
It's incredibly powerful words from Senator Padilla. I think it's one of the reasons why there was such a visceral reaction on the Hill, both because we know him to be such a good man, and this is just an example of how out of control the Trump administration is at this point. We've seen an unprecedented assault on the economy, on healthcare, on Social Security, and of course on the rule of law, on the American way of life, on democracy itself. But that's why it's going to be important for all of us to continue to show up and speak up and stand up, push back aggressively against the Trump administration, their extremism against Donald Trump and his minions in Congress who are nothing more than a reckless rubber stamp for his extreme agenda. And we'll continue to do that in the Congress, in the courts, and in communities all across the country.
Sure, millions of people trust Vistaprint to print business cards they love. Yep. But did you know we also print their t-shirts? And postcards. And signs. And custom merch. That water bottle is engraved, where we print with lasers. At Vistaprint, we print your brand on banners so your customers can notice you. Stickers so they can remember you. And everything else your business needs to keep them coming back to you. Right now, new customers get 20% off at Vistaprint.com. Because if you need it, we print it.
Okay, y'all, I
Let's
gotta
get
go to
fiscal.
sleep. Good night.
Lesson 3, savings gains. Setting up your financial future, Credit Karma gives you the tools to unlock a whole new level of financial fitness so you can build your credit scores. Better scores can lead to lower rates on